Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to be inspired by a true titan of the investment world.
Mark Yusko.
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 CEO and CIO of Morgan Creek Capital.
Believes that Bitcoin can hit 250,000 within the next 5 years.
They're going to punish crypto because of FTX. Maybe the plan all along was the Great Reset.
The post-FTX world, rebuilding institutional trust. Welcome, Mark Yusko.
Thank you so much for joining. You know, it's been we've both had quite the year behind us, I think.
Yeah.
My little story was, as my digital asset fund LPs know, we unfortunately were impacted by FTX. It was late at night. As we were saying, in order to hedge our downside, we were shorting on FTX. That was the one place we could short. And so I had with these big short positions. So I was like, I can't sell them at once. Got a TWAP. And so as it freed up, withdrew. At some point, it got stuck. And I stayed up, 3 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, okay, go to sleep. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Didn't go through. Then I got shivers. Then I called Simon. Then I called our auditors. Then I called you.
That's right.
And so it's been great having you, as a supporter, LP, friend, mentor, everything, in this journey. How has the last year been for you? You also had your own challenges. You had, with BlockFi, SBF trying to acquire you. How was he as a person, on the negotiating tables and being in the room?
Well, a couple things. So one, I actually never met the guy. We were second largest investors in BlockFi. So by way of background, Morgan Creek, capital management, been around almost 20 years. We do a bunch of different things in OCIO and fund of funds. 5 years ago, started Morgan Creek Digital, which is a venture capital entity that focuses on digital asset space. We invest directly in companies, and then we invest sometimes in funds as well. Long story short, out of our first fund, which was 2018 vintage, one of our, was small at the time, grew into something large, investments was BlockFi. It grew, as I said, to maybe our second or third largest investment by market cap. In terms of the FTX impact, what happened is, we looked, well, actually never even looked at it. We were shown the FTX deal all 3 times, passed just on price alone, and just never made any sense. So actually never had the chance to interact with any of the FTX people. And I like to claim now, which is easy, hindsight's 2020, that I've said very publicly in that one interview, Sam and Caroline are the masterminds of nothing. Nothing. They are useful idiots. Someone else way above their pay grade engineered this whole thing. So, and I think watching him and her now in video many, many times, I think that would be corroborated. But our impact there was, BlockFi was the victim of fraud, right? I mean, they didn't have a token like Celsius or Voyager. They weren't stealing anybody's money. They lent money, actually not even an over, people are saying, oh, they were bad lenders because they had such a concentrated position. It was only 7% at peak assets. When the market collapsed, it became a large percentage, but that's because Sam lied. There was no there. So it was frustrating from our perspective because we had the equity capital lined up to solve the 3 arrows problem. The 3 arrows problem was, again, those guys lied. Kyle and Sue lied about how much capital they actually had, and they told all the lenders they had more than they had, and so the lenders lent them money. And when Luna came to Terra, I always think that was ironic, on my birthday a year ago, and I'm a little incoherent today because for my birthday, which was last week, my wife took the whole family to Smoky Mountain National Park. So I was in the middle of nowhere with no cell service this morning, had to drive to Knoxville in the Smoky Mountain mist, which I did get lost, almost didn't make the flight, but I did, and I'm here. But it was an early wake-up call. But that experience of Three Arrows collapsing caused the first ripple. And again, I believe that all of what occurred since with FTX was them trying to cover up, which is usually how this goes, right? Bernie Madoff didn't have a problem until he had a problem, and then he had to cover up his steps and then perpetrate a fraud for many, many years. I believe Sam and the gang lost a bunch of money in the Luna collapse. Then they said, hey, you know what? If you borrow $1 million from the bank, you have a banker. If you borrow $1,000 from a bank, you got a banker. If you borrow $1 million, you got a partner. So why don't we just go buy the banks? So let's go buy Celsius. And they looked at Celsius and said, oh, geez, that's ugly. No, we can't buy that one. So let's buy Voyager. So they bought Voyager. And then the BlockFi thing kind of happened the same way. They had this $700 million loan that they didn't have any money to pay back. I'm like, well, if we just acquire the lender, then we don't have to pay it back. We can just transfer in FTT tokens, which we found out later were nothing. So that's a long-winded way of saying what we learned from all of that was even good business models run by good people can be destroyed by bad people doing bad things. And then good people like you and me get called by the other bad people. I shouldn't say that, given that they regulate me, who, again, I believe are malintented. I mean, I really believe there's malintent. You saw the video of the G-Man up there. When Clayton was involved and in charge, he was consistent, he was prudent, and he was iterative. Over 5 years, he made decisions that actually made sense. He didn't agree with them, but they actually made sense, and they didn't go too far. This is not a security. Okay. Second time you ask him, this is not a security. Third time you ask him, this is not a security. Like, wow, that's consistent. That's measured. That's prudent. When it changed, the whole tenor changed. And again, there's probably reasons for that and linkages back to the whole FTX debacle that we can go. Actually, you can just watch my video on that where I went way too far. And the black ass didn't show up, so I'm still here.
And so after all this, 2 years ago, there was a lot of leaders in the crypto space. Some got filtered out for fraud, SBF, Mashinsky, Su, and so forth. Then there's countless that went bankrupt, even Barry Silver with multiple, whether it's Genesis, et cetera, filing for Chapter 11. And then there's others that are, bruised and beaten, whether it's, for example, even, Scaramucci, unfortunately, selling part of his company to SBF and so forth, coming on a bad year. Now it's down to, the few of us left that are kind of manning the fort and having to defend what is left. How do you think we can, since it is essentially up to us now, rebuild that trust, rebuild that institutional trust where people say, hey, you know what? Crypto is an asset class that we can build on again, that will come back, that is not just filled with crifters.
Look, it's a great question. And I think it's really interesting in that we never had it. So we didn't lose it. It was really never there, and it's not unusual for it not to be there because we're so early. If you go back in the history of any market, right? Whether it was barter markets from 2,000 years ago or a few hundred years ago, to the first stock markets around the world, to any market, the bad people will show up. And you mentioned leaders, right? To me, there were a couple people you mentioned who were actually leaders, and then there were criminals. Bad people doing bad things. Yes, they became large, in terms of billions of dollars, but they were just bad people doing bad things and stealing. And that's been going on forever, right? Called bucket shops for a reason, called boiler rooms for a reason, savings and loan crisis, bad people stealing. And the response from the regulators is always the same. Comes down hard. That's why I said on that clip, they're going to punish crypto. But I think that was the plan, right? I think all along that the banking industry does not want to be disrupted. Just like I think you mentioned earlier today, we're sitting in this town. There's a law. Everyone's heard the term red flagging, right? We've all heard that term. Anyone know where it comes from? Know the story? Okay, when the horseless carriage was invented, the horse and buggy lobby, I guess it wasn't a lobby back then, it was just the horse and buggy industry, paid the commissioners of this great town to pass a law that made, if you had a horseless carriage, you had to pay a human to walk in front of it with a red flag to warn the other people that you were coming. Anyone ever seen that in real life? No, you've never seen that. That was a stupid law. But it actually existed for a short period of time because the incumbent didn't want to get disrupted by the better technology. When the airplane came out, my grandfather-in-law left his safe job at the train company to go work for American Airlines, and his parents were horrified. And the train companies passed out pamphlets outside his little place in Tulsa, Oklahoma, saying that if you got on an airplane, you'd die because your body would cave in on itself when you went over a certain miles per hour. I flew on an airplane today. I'm okay. It worked out just fine. But that's what's happening with banks right now. The banks were like, look, 2009 to 2015, first they ignore you phase. The famous quote that Gandhi didn't say, and I wish I could remember the guy who said it so I could give him credit, but Gandhi always, they say it was Gandhi's quote. But first they ignore you. A bunch of nerds and geeks playing with your magic internet money, children, go, whatever. $1 billion leaves the banks. Who cares, right? Then 2016 to 21, then they laugh at you. Bunch of nerds and geeks playing with your magic internet money. $10 billion? Pocket change. Kid stuff. Then they fight you. 2022 to 2027, that's for now, okay? We're in the then they fight you phase. $100 billion? Now we got a fucking problem, all right? You collectively have to go away. Well, how are we gonna do that? Well, the banks are gonna pay people, lobbying, fancy word for corruption, and they are going to assert their influence through regulatory change or regulatory arbitrage or regulatory pressure or just simply putting people out of business. And you talk about the just price to get an audit. Does it make sense? Did the audits get better? Did they get more efficient? No, but they got 7 times more expensive. That is a form of repression. And, take banking. What did Signature Bank do? Was Signature Bank a crypto bank? You freaking kidding me? Have you looked at their balance sheet? It's real estate loans that are all going to zero because they, haven't even been in an office building lately. There's no people in it. So that's why Signature Bank had a problem. It's not a crypto bank, but it got taken over a weekend with no warning because it was quote unquote a crypto bank. And Barney Frank said they wanted to send a message to crypto that we are serious. We're going to shut down this bank with no real reason other than they could because it had this much crypto deposits relative to its deposit base. And then we go to the whole next level of, okay, if businesses are going to embrace this technology, which is as inevitable as flying on an airplane or driving in a horseless carriage, there is zero chance that all of the financial industry that we all take for granted today, that's been a great run for the banks for 800 years, since the Medicis and the Rothschilds, there is zero chance that 100% of that is not going to be on blockchains. It's as inevitable as air travel. 100% it's going to be on blockchains. It's not going to be in centralized databases. It's not going to be Visa today. If you used a Visa card today, it ran on COBOL. It runs on a mainframe computer written in COBOL. I'm asking the guy at Visa, I said, well, isn't it kind of a problem? He says, yeah, but it's kind of a moat because no one knows how to hack it. But when it breaks, we literally have to put a light on at the Sunnyvale retirement home and get some 80-year-old to come fix it. And he's not joking because my 85-year-old dad can still code COBOL. None of you can.
Mine too.
Okay? And so that's the reality that is coming. But look, the banks don't want this to go away. For 800 years, they've had this amazing run. In the old days, I lent you money. I wrote down on my ledger, Felix owes me $100. He comes back, pay me 110. Oh, Felix, it says 200. You owe me 220. He had to trust me. He had to trust. So the Medicis, 800 years ago, said, no. Felix, you keep a ledger. Mark, you keep a ledger. And we, the benevolent Medicis, for a small fee, will decide that the ledgers match. Dual entry accounting. But the Medicis, I'm unscrupulous. I could pay them a little something, something. Felix comes back, pay me 110. They're like, Mark's book says 200. But my book says 100. I'm sorry. Mark's book is you got to trust us. We're the Medicis. So that now we don't have to trust anybody because we have truth. Blockchains are truth. And with truth, 7 trillion. Okay, come on, y'all. Trillion. The T word. See, we've been anesthetized to how big a trillion is. Lock these doors. And it's been going a long time, by the way, okay? And I'm going to miss my flight. But a trillion is I got to lock these doors. You all got to sit here and listen to us nanner on, okay, for 31,710 years. And we got to come up with a way to spend $1 every second. $1 a second for 31,710 years is 1 trillion. So 7 of those babies are wasted every single year. I say wasted, meaning that is the rent that's being extracted by the banking system, the Medicis and the Rothschilds. You guys know this. Single family, the Rothschild family, now it's a big family, don't get me wrong, big family, has the same wealth as the bottom 3/4 of the people on this planet. One family, 3/4 of the people. So the banking industry is a very, very profitable business. And it is at risk, right? The same way that air travel was at risk or, horse and buggy.
So then what do you think happens in the United States? Is it, how would you put percentages maybe? We win a court, we go offshore and we lose the United States, or I had a third one.
Look,
I got a third one.
80%-ish of digital asset transactions.
Wave. Of course, 2024, we got a big election coming up.
80% of digital asset transactions occur outside of the US border, right? Ish. So it's already global. So I would say, does Bitcoin care what rule we pass in the United States? Not at all, right? They subpoenaed
They didn't care about China either.
We saw Zuck on the screen a bunch this morning. When they were subpoenaed him to go to DC and talk, he had to go. They subpoenaed the Bitcoin CEO and they were unavailable.
Yep.
So they
Satoshi?
It's like show
Didn't
up.
pick up.
But didn't pick up. And Hal, God rest his soul, wasn't available. So, but the key is that the U.S. can choose to harness innovation, or it can resist it. And right now they're resisting it. And to me, it's literally like the ostrich. The ostrich, everyone thinks buries its head in the sand. It actually doesn't, right? The lion comes out of the bush. The ostrich turns its back, lays its head down on the sand, doesn't actually bury it, but just lays it down its head, and it pretends that the lion can't see the ostrich. The lion still eats the ostrich. The ostrich just doesn't see it happen. So
That's like the cat hiding under the bed with
right.
Yeah,
and so we can go through all of this hysteria, and some people even go to jail, and well, no one's going to go to jail, not even Sam, which is fucking ridiculous. It's like that scene in National Treasure, where Nicolas Cage finds the treasure and he's talking to the policeman. He says, what would you like? And he's like, I'd really like to not go to prison. He says, someone's got to go to prison. And they catch the guy up in Boston. But someone needs to go to prison, but probably not gonna. So, but they can pass all these changes, and we can have the theater and the histrionics. But at the end of the day, decentralized tech is going to continue to evolve. And the most valuable assets in the world are going to migrate to that decentralized tech, and it's going to go where it's wanted. Now, unfortunately, the scammers are going to go along for the ride the same way that the bucket shop people and the penny stocks. Like, remember when cobalt was a thing? You know, before we were talking about the little kids mining it, but back when cobalt was a hot topic, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and blockchain. Remember changing your name to blockchain? There was Long Island Iced Tea, Long Island Blockchain. So
Plus
these
doing 57%, something like that.
yeah. These guys called me up. They said, we're starting a company called Cobalt Blockchain. And they were a couple guys in Toronto on the Toronto Stock Exchange, which was a place where a lot of penny stocks or something. I said, oh, tell me about this. And I said, oh, we're going to use the blockchain to determine the provenance of the cobalt. So you know it's not mined in a conflict zone, right? Okay, that's actually a good use case. Okay, I'm interested. So how much cobalt do you have? Oh, I don't have any. I'm like, well, what are you going to do? Well, we have this gold mine in Democratic Republic of Congo. We think there's some cobalt there. I'm like, you are a freaking pump and dump scam, which was exactly what they were. But they raised $6 million. So this stuff has been going on forever. It will continue to go on. And we're not going to change it by having, you know, Gangster Gary to try to, again, create this theater about what is good, bad, or indifferent in terms of his, I'm going to tell you, but I'm not going to tell you. Like I told you, my predecessor said Ethereum was not a security. I might have said it in a class that I agreed with him, and even though it's on video, so you can't deny it, but I'm not going to say it again out loud because then I wouldn't be able to change my mind. But none of that really matters. The end of the day is Ethereum's either going to continue to grow and take TVL, or it's going to get displaced by Solana, but not until Solana can be 100% accurate. 99 doesn't work. Or something else, Cosmos or Polkadot or whatever. Or there'll be some new combination change. But the tech is going to keep going. That's why I love working with you guys is I'm old. And I love the way you did this. The young people got to go first, and then the old guy is on at the end. So, which is fine. But I'm old. So I'm not a tech guy. I'm a financial services guy. But I get to hang out with all you young tech guys, and I get to learn about the technology and the innovation and what's really happening. And look, I have no idea which is going to win. Like, I know, even though I don't know how it works, but I know that the internet exists of Internet Protocol, TCP/IP, okay, as the base layer, then FTP for files, HTTPS for websites, SMTP for email, and www that ties it all together. Perfect stack. So, all right, I'm a logical guy. Is it going to be Bitcoin as my base layer, Filecoin as my FTP? I got my Ethereum as the www dot, and I got Cosmos or Polkadot in the middle, maybe. I don't know, maybe that works. Oh, no, the maxis, right? I actually love surfing spaces at night. I go to Bitcoin maxi place, and I get out of here, you shitcoiner, you own Ethereum. I'm like, I own more Bitcoin than you. Why are you, shut up. And then I'll go to an Ethereum site, and they'll be, get out of here, you Bitcoin maxi. I'm like, I own more Solana than you. Just leave me alone. So, but is it going to be what the Bitcoin maxis say? Bitcoin, one chain to rule them all, Lightning, something else. I don't know, maybe. Or, I thought it was a cool chart up here earlier, or are we going to have a bunch of L1s and interoperability across the chains? It's viable mental model, more attack vectors, maybe not. But that's where you guys come in to help me understand that, and then I can put money behind it.
Oh, man. Well, listen, we've been through these cycles before. You first, then Moorhead got you involved, right? Like back in the day?
The which?
Dan Moorhead?
Well, no, Dan's the original OG. I'm here because of Dan. Dan and I have been friends for 30 years from when he was a Goldman and then Tiger. We backed him when he started his macro fund. We were his first institutional capital, Pantera Macro. 2013, he called me up and said, hey, come to San Francisco. I'm going to buy you dinner. I'm like, great, have dinner with my friend. Sits down. He says, hey, I'm shutting down my fund. Give the money back. I'm like, Dan, why would you give back $1 billion charging 2 and 20? He says, I'm going to spend the rest of my career doing Bitcoin and blockchain. And I was not running drugs on the Silk Road. I was not a cryptography student. So I'm less rich than I should be because I wasn't doing those two things. Because I didn't get it. He said Bitcoin, I didn't understand it. As soon as he said blockchain and infrastructure, I got it. We made a lot of money in infrastructure from, Google in '96 to Facebook in 12 to a bunch of Alibaba to a bunch of things. We've always done well in infrastructure. So I got blockchain immediately. That fund's up a lot, I don't know, 17x or something. But I should have put the money in the Bitcoin fund. That's up 350x. But I didn't. And I didn't get it right away. It took me a year-ish to get over my skepticism and say it wasn't bullshit. And I wrote just one little paragraph in 2014 to my clients saying, hey, this could be interesting. And I got hate. I mean, just hate. Like, you're an idiot. Go back and do your job. We'll fire you. Wow. I mean, the next paragraph was about Saudi stocks, which I will argue is way more controversial, right? Think about what they do to people. I mean, way more controversial. And I got no shit about that. Nothing. But talk about Bitcoin and they're like, you're an idiot. I'm like, wow. And so I'm fine. Price went from $500 to 186. I'm like, oh, they were right. 8 weeks later, it was $1,000. I'm like, no, there's something here. My son was graduating. I said, go talk to Dan. My son's wanted to live in San Francisco his whole life. I said, go talk to Dan, go talk to Coinbase, get a job there. And he went out, talked to Dan, and looked at Coinbase. He's like, I don't know, Dad, maybe it's going to be a big deal. I'm going to go to KPMG. Safe, gets me. I'm saying, you're going to hate it. Quit after 9 months, which he did. When Coinbase went public, he called me up and said, yeah, Dad, you were right, but you're not as smart as you think you are. I'm like, oh, do tell. I told you to work at Coinbase. He's like, yeah, but you didn't lever up the house and put all in Bitcoin. I'm like, you are a shit.
There.
That is truth.
There you go.
Truth is an absolute defense, by the way, for the lawyers in the room. Truth is an absolute defense. But that was 15. It took me until 16 to kind of get my clients to come along for the ride with us. And we started to dabble. And then, like I said, in 18, we kind of went all in and started investing in the infrastructure around it. And look, today I spend, which is hilarious. I mean, 60-year-old guy, spend all my time in the digital space. I got two great partners over here to help me. Or maybe one. No, both are here still. Both are still here. But they're the young guys that do all the real work. But I'm excited about the optionality of being involved in this sector that I think is the future. If we think about the future of technology, I said this is as inevitable as every technological evolution that we have seen. And the one that's so exciting for me is the exponential wave. Right? If you think about Web 1, and Web 1 basically was the extension of computing. So computing power started in 1954 at the invention of the mainframe, 14 years later at the invention of the microchip in 68, and 14 years later, where I grew up in Seattle, there's this little thing called the personal computer. And Steve Ballmer's mom said, honey, why'd you work for that company? No one ever wanted a computer in their house. He has 18 billion reasons why he was right, mom was wrong. But from that point, for another 14 years to 96, you had Web 1. And Web 1 created a lot of wealth. Inarguably created a lot of wealth, right? Microsoft and Intel and a whole bunch of companies, a lot of wealth. But that was the linear part of the curve, right? We got an exponential growth curve. Exponential growth is the eighth wonder of the world. It's the most powerful thing in the world. By the way, here's a challenge, all you tough guys today. Fold a piece of paper tonight 8 times. I dare you. Can't do it, but you'll try. So the thing is that Web 1 was pretty amazing. But 14 years later, in 2010, we had this thing called the mobile net. So we went from the internet to the mobile net. And Web 2 created more wealth. And then we get to the knee of the curve. Well, now in 2024, we go to the truth net, where we replace trust with truth. Now we get to the exponential part of the growth. And when you start to go parabolic to the y-axis, the amount of wealth that's going to be created in this opportunity set, it's mind-numbing. And it's because we're going to take that $7 trillion that's wasted in the frictional cost of COBOL and Fortran and C++ and JavaScript and all these crappy systems. In this town, they issue bank loans all day, every day. It takes 30 days to settle because 7 different people have to get involved in 7 different systems. 30 days? Are you kidding me? We're celebrating because FedNow is going to allow us to go to T+1 instead of T+2.
Seconds.
How about T-Instant? How about T-Instant? How about T-Now? I mean, So we're on the verge of really big stuff. And I didn't answer any of the questions you asked, which is, why you saved me for last. So.
Well, listen, we've been through cycles before, and we'll make it through this one too. And I'm really looking forward to growing with you and Morgan Creek, and really appreciate your support. You were one of the first institutional backers to take a bet on me, which as somebody that didn't come from finance, that kind of started this on my own at 23, it means a lot. So
well, I will say so. I have the best job in the world. For 35 years, I got paid to talk to the smartest people in the world and give them money. And so my job was a talent scout. And I'm all about, there's 4 things that you look at when you're trying to evaluate investment opportunity. There's people, there's philosophy, there's process, and there's price or performance. Everybody focuses on the 4th P. Everybody buys what they wish they would have bought. They chase the hot dot. They hire the hot hand, whatever's doing the best. We throw that out. We do whatever. We go all about the people. And so, to brag on Felix a little bit, said I have this job. I'm a talent scout. So I go out and I travel around. And my daughter used to live in Santa Monica, and I happened to be heading out there to go see her. And I'm out on family business, so I do a little business. And I find out some people, and like someone said earlier, if it weren't for the internet, I would have no friends. So I met Felix on the internet and said, hey, I think I remember he was in Santa Monica or someplace close. And he drove in, and we had coffee. And we've all had the experience where you meet somebody and instantaneously that you're going to be friends or you're going to work together. And there's just something. There's something about a spark. And then when you spend a little more time with them, you realize that not only are they a really good person or the really smart person, but they've got that spark, what I call a fast motor. And Felix has one of the fastest motors I've met in the business, and he inspired me to actually gain conviction about what I was doing. And as I said, I got this great job. 1, I get to talk to really smart people, but 2, now, as I've shifted from allocator to investor, I get to spend my time with young people with that energy and passion and that fire. And I'm reverse aging, which is kind of cool, because when you're around really talented, really energetic people, it makes you better and it makes you want to partner with them and be around them. So I'm grateful to you for that experience.
it means a lot to me. Thank you so much, Mark. Now, Yusko.
Yeah, absolutely.